Let's make a platformer. Now that we have a player that can run, jump, and slide around, we need to give them a bigger map to play on. So we're going to do three things: extend the map level, add a camera that will follow the player, and add some map limits so the player doesn't run off the edge. So let's first open our map editor and open tab 1 for our map tiles. Then holding space, I can pan to the right while the grid helps keep me lined up. So let's just continue the ground tiles from where they left off and add some grass on top. I'll make it look nice, but I'll leave it flat, and you can add hills later if you want. I'm going to add a little marker that will break up the scene a bit, and if I do this right, it'll show me the edge of each game screen. Next, I can easily copy-paste this all the way to the end of the map editor. I'll just zoom out with the mouse wheel to make this a bit easier. Open the Select tool and highlight this whole part of the map. Control-C to copy, and then use the Stamp tool to paste this over and over again. Now you might decide to make your games just 1 or 2 long levels like this, or split it up into many levels and only use 1 to 3 game screens for each level. But for now, I want to have a huge area to play around in and prepare for some physics testing coming up. For that, I'll want quite a bit of variety in my level. For example, when testing a good height between platforms, we can make a ladder here. And some stairs here. And for testing the distance between platforms, we can do something like this. We can test the ceiling tiles to make sure we can't jump up through them with something like this. That's enough for me to test out, but you can add more. Now before we run around on this level, we need the camera to follow us around. So let's go back to our code editor and start with the variables. All I need to do is move the camera left and right on the x-axis, so I don't have to worry about the y-axis up and down. This will be a simple camera that will just be locked to the player position. Pretty straightforward to code. The only variable that needs to change will be a camera x, often abbreviated to cam, and we'll start it at 0. Then let's go to our main update function. This is where we will update the camera position based on the player position. You could make this a function, but it's only going to be a few lines long, so I'm happy with just a comment here. First, we will make cam x set to be where the player x is. It's not actually as simple as that, but I'll show you why before adding anything else. Next, we use a Pico 8 built-in function, camera, and it just takes an x and y position. I'll run it with Control-R so we see where the camera lines up. So it's actually the left side of the camera that we locked to our player position. And that's because the camera's XY position is the top left corner, just like most things in Pico 8. Having the player on the left could be good if you're making an endless runner only moving to the right. But for our game, let's set the player in the middle of the screen. If the screen is 128 pixels wide, then 64 pixels is half. So we simply subtract 64 from the player X, and that will put the left side of the camera view 64 pixels behind the player. Now that's not perfectly centered because our player X is the left side of our player, and the player is drawn in the next 8 pixels to the right of that. So to get the camera to be dead center on the player, we add half the player width. We know it's just 4, but if we write it this way, then the code will work even for players that are any width, not just 8 pixels. So let's run this now, and here's our centered player on a giant level. I didn't build much for my test level, but feel free to make some interesting level designs to test out, and show us if you find a level design that breaks the physics and collisions we wrote here. I know some of you are like, challenge accepted. But seriously, testing the limits of what you build is a great learning experience. If you find glitches in our code, you can share it with us by saving the last 8 seconds of your game in a GIF by pressing F9. Then share it with us by email or Twitter. So let's see what we have so far. First, I noticed the map ends, but the camera shows past it. Falling downstairs kinda works, a bit too far away though. And a player warps up a tile when jumping to a certain height. It happens just when the player is starting to fall. So the code to correct if a player gets stuck in the ground kicks in and sets the player above that platform it just detected. Finally, the camera also shows past the map's start. And we can even jump off, and our poor player falls for eternity. Alright, so a couple things we can fix here is how the map suddenly ends, but our camera shows emptiness past it. And the fact that our player can fall off the edge of the earth. If you're a flat earther, you might like that feature, but this world is a sphere, so it doesn't work that way. Let's start by adding more variables. We'll need to know where the map starts, that's 0, and where the map ends. Now the Pico 8 map editor gives us 8 game screens wide. So 8 game screens times 128 pixels is 1024 pixels. Then in our simple camera update code, let's add a couple checks. If cam X is less than map start, then cam X sets to map start. So that will make sure the camera never moves farther left than where the map starts, and so doesn't reveal the emptiness to the left of the map. So let's do the same thing, but for the right edge, the end of the map. If cam X is more than map end, then cam X sets to map end. But remember, the cam X is the left side of the screen, so we actually want to end one game screen to the left of the map end. So we subtract 128 pixels from both map ends. That will fix our camera problem, but not the player falling problem. So let's go to our player update function. And at the very end, let's limit the player to the map. First, check if the player X is less than the map start. Then, the player X sets to the map start. So even if they try to go more left, the position will be reset before it ever shows on the game, so it'll just look like they hit a wall. And we do the same for the map end. If player X is more than map end, then player X sets to map end. But just like the camera X, the player X is the left side, so we subtract the player width from both map ends. And that's it. Let's try it out. Awesome! I can't wait to see what kind of levels you create or glitches you encounter. In the next video, we'll show you how to adjust certain variables to play around with the physics, so you can tweak your game to exactly what you want, and have quite a bit of fun too. We are Nerdy Teachers. Questions or suggestions are welcome in the comments, and subscribe to tell us you want more.